disasters decapitates our economic base by almost 2% of our entire economy every year.
We've costed what is under threat at the moment, and it comes to almost $1 billion.
We need $50,000 for every person to move them and stabilize their lives. That's $1 billion in total.
We need to redefine GDP not just as gross domestic product, but as green domestic product.
Asia and the Pacific is the most disaster-prone region in the world. Sea levels are rising by up to 8 millimeters per year in some parts of the Pacific. Over 15 years, cyclones in the Arabian Sea have become more frequent and more intense. The World Bank is predicting a $68 billion annual bill before the end of the century. Changes in the Earth's climate have been ascribed to natural variation, but also to global warming. There has been a 3/4 degree rise in the average temperature of the Earth since the 1880s, and scientists predict this may rise to between 2 and 4 degrees by the end of the century. Less dramatic, but no less costly, are patterns of development that are squandering nature's natural capital. Its fish, farmland and forest, its freshwater and fresh air. Last time on Nature Inc., we saw how the Pacific state of Kiribati was preparing for evacuation. And in the Indian state of Gujarat, we reported on steps being taken to head off environmental disaster. This time, we're in the Philippines and Vietnam. We find that communities are making preparations for a more extreme world. On March the 11th, 2011, off the coast of northeast Japan, an earthquake measuring 8.9 on the Richter scale caused a devastating tsunami, with waves reaching over 20 meters. 3,000 kilometers away in the Philippines, the office of the governor of the region of Albay received a tsunami alert.
Level 2 on the tsunami warning. It's an estimate of a 1-meter height tsunami that is estimated to hit our shorelines between 5 and 7 p.m. today.
We received the first advice at 2:30. When they elevated the alert level to 2, we were able to immediately order an evacuation.
Mercifully, there was to be no repeat of the 2004 tsunami, which killed 250,000 people in countries bordering the Indian Ocean. Emergency measures in Albay, with a population of 1.2 million, showed that lessons learnt from the Indian tsunami had not been forgotten. The Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. And Albay, with its active volcano, is one of the most disaster-prone regions in the Philippines, suffering from frequent typhoons, floods, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes and landslides. Disasters are a constant drain on the Philippine economy, costing an average of $350 million every year. In 2006, Super Typhoon Reming hit Albay, claiming over 600 lives. It was given the adjective super because wind speed reached 240 kilometers per hour, dropping over 466 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. Devastating flash floods and landslides were the cause of the casualties.
It was a traumatic devastation. It's beyond words. There are highways of death. The flash flood then associated with wall of volcanic debris are, as high as 20 to 30 feet, killing people. They are buried alive. The incident at that time was beyond words. In every places I went through, there are death.
Rides Barcia is a photojournalist. She covered the event for the Manila Times.
I could see then, during the retrieval operation, where a father and son holding each other under the earth. That disaster is unforgettable.
While climate skeptics play down the link between global warming and the increased frequency of extreme weather events, the people of Albay are in no doubt about the change in their weather.
Pirming makusog ang paros.
30 years ago, the weather was quite different. But today, the typhoons are getting stronger. The weather's very erratic. It's very dangerous now to go fishing.
Albai's governor, Joey Salceda, has pioneered a zero-casualty policy. His administration has adopted a killing two birds with one stone approach, investing in disaster risk reduction to make, claims the governor, people of his region safer and better off.
The maintenance of the zero casualty goal is one of the distinctive comparative advantages of Albay. Once there is a signal, like signal number 1, and it's strong, it's gonna hit us, we evacuate. And because once you evacuate in the midst of a disaster, it's no longer an evacuation, it is a rescue.
Super Typhoon Reming showed the necessity for a region-wide investment in preparing for disaster. For Governor Salceda, it accounts for why the local economy grew by 8%, while the national economy all but stagnated.
The shadow price of doing nothing is definitely more than triple if we do something. The economic logic of adaptation is that it allows development to proceed even in the midst of risks. So what we've seen in Albay, for example, is that because of our investments in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, is that we'd actually seen, despite all the typhoons, despite all the images of all the disasters that affect us, business investments has actually increased rapidly.
Canal systems full of rubbish and other debris restrict runoff and clog drains, adding to the devastation caused by storms and floods. One measure the governor claims is reaping benefits is the government-sponsored Food for Work program aimed at low-income families. Running since 2006, each volunteer gets a 5-kilo bag of rice for a day's work clearing the canals. There is a reforestation program to stabilize hillsides, and 318 hectares of mangroves have been replanted as a barrier to storm surges.
If you have a clean area, you have a fresh air, well, the community have a good health.
The Food for Work concept has also been used to reward people who follow an evacuation order.
I give them 5 kilos of rice for cooperation. And we are the only incentivized evacuation program. And we've done it so consistently over the years that people were convinced that I really mean it. And 5 kilos is a lot. It's a lot to ordinary, to ordinary families in terms of as payment, as a disturbance fee.
The evacuation regime saves lives and money because it cuts the costs of deploying search and rescue teams. To better protect those living on the coast from sea level rise and the brunt of the storms, an ambitious resettlement is underway. 5,700 new homes have already been built on higher ground, with 10,000 more planned. Villagers are encouraged to move from rice cultivation to sweet potato. The sweet potato is far more resilient than rice during typhoons. They are not affected by wind as they grow flat on the ground and will thrive in upland areas without irrigation.
And it looks like the tsunami has engulfed several cities.
The March the 11th tsunami alert is an acid test for Albay's zero casualty policy. The wave will not come ashore, but these people didn't know that. We go with photojournalist Rides Barcia as she documents the evacuation.
Majority of the people are fleeing away from home because of tsunami threat, but some opted to stay. I wonder why.
Before long, Rides meets a local community leader helping coordinate the evacuation.
We know the effect of tsunami. That's why we are very much alarmed. This is very critical to the coastal areas. That's why we made it a point that the children and the old ones went upland.
But 99% of the people move out from their home to go to the safer grounds. It's no longer a drill, it's a real threat. to be swept. Even pigs are evacuated. Oftentimes, they bring with them their cows, their pigs, their chicken.
Once at the beach, Rides is surprised to find that just 1 hour before the first wave is due to strike, there are some people who have ignored the evacuation order.
Maybe they're not afraid. Sometimes this is the problem of the government. The community, some of the communities are hard-headed.
But most did comply. In an orderly evacuation, 85% of the shore dwellers judged at risk from the tsunami, some 75,000, moved inland. But the governor says that no matter how effective the zero-casualty policy is, it's a band-aid response. In his view, the only long-term solution is for the world to agree an international accord.
Every day, every time I wake up, I just pray for a psychic shift in the worldview of all the national leaders of the world. Adaptation is not the only answer. Although adaptation is very critical at this point for us, it is our imperative, but I think mitigation definitely is now the global imperative.
In part 2, how the rice farmers of the Mekong in Vietnam are coping with the effects of sea level rise. Past and present collide in Can Tho, the biggest and most prosperous city in the Mekong Delta, in southern Vietnam. The rivers and waterways of the Delta bring farmers to Can Tho's floating market, selling a wide variety of fruit and vegetables, such as mangoes, pineapple, jackfruit and rice. Nearly 2/3 of the world's population live in Asia, and rice is their staple food. The Mekong Delta covers 39,000 square kilometers. That's larger than Belgium. Its rice paddies produce half of Vietnam's total rice output, more than Japan. However, half of the Mekong rice paddies are less than 2 meters above sea level. Saltwater destroys rice paddy. Already, it's estimated 1 million hectares have been contaminated. Worried about the rising seas, the Vietnamese government has begun planning for a 1-meter rise in sea level by the end of the century. The consequences of doing nothing would see more than 1/3 of the Mekong Delta flooded by then.
Nói chung là cái biến đổi khí hậu á thì nó rất là
I can tell you climate change has had a big impact on the production, on the agricultural production and on the lives of the people because of the intensified drought, the saline water coming into the field, as well as the stormy weather.
hoặc là nó hạn hán, hoặc là cái lượng mưa nó kéo dài thì nó cũng gây tác động rất là lớn đối với đời sống sản xuất nông nghiệp.
They've all had a very negative effect on agriculture and as a result on the income of the farmers.
Thì từ cái chỗ giảm năng suất lúa thì nó sẽ giảm đi cái thu nhập của người nông dân. Thì do đó cái biến đổi khí hậu thì nó rất có ảnh hưởng lớn đến đời sống sản xuất của nông dân.
The first line of defense are mangroves. Adapted to brackish water, they form a natural barrier against sea erosion. However, it's estimated that half of Vietnam's mangroves have already been cut down, mainly for shrimp farming. During the 2004 tsunami, in the few areas bordering the Indian Ocean where there were still healthy stands, the loss of life and coastal damage was minimized. The international German aid agency is supporting a plan to replant the mangroves.
Mangroves actually attenuate wave energy. They reduce wave energy and therefore protect the dike from erosion.
A 2005 study in Thailand concluded that an intact mangrove forest can reduce wave energy by up to 90%. Without this natural barrier, the cost of maintaining the dikes that funnel fresh water to the paddy has skyrocketed.
As you can clearly see, everything in front of the dike has been washed away. You can see some remnants of mangrove trees in the distance. Erosion here occurs at a rate of about 30 meters per year. Not so many years ago, this entire area used to be covered with mangroves. But erosion is so strong that all these mangroves have been washed away.
Without intervention, many more mangroves will be lost. In 2007, a new system of mangrove management was introduced in Vietnam. with conservation and replanting key features. This is the coastal village of Alto B in Sok Trang province, within the Mekong Delta. With the backing of foreign aid, the local authority is involving villagers in the group management of their protective mangrove. Around 150 hectares is managed for multiple use, for aquaculture and for sustainable harvesting.
The village enjoys many benefits from the mangrove forest. The forest acts as a barrier to the storms and saves our rice from the seawater. This benefits all of our agricultural production, but we also get the benefit from the mangrove forest in terms of the sea life we harvest, like the crabs and the clams that live in the mangrove forest.
Since we started the co-management, we're very happy because our daily income has increased. We can benefit now from about 50 to 60,000 dongs per day.
A recent UN study valued the services provided by 1 square kilometre of mangrove forest at $900,000 per year. This 10-year-old plantation was established close to Auto B village.
Here you can see a natural gap. This was not a gap which we created, but in this gap you see light, new plants coming up and growing well. What we are doing, we are imitating nature. We mimic nature. We look at how is nature regenerating, and we just learn from nature and then imitate it. It's a win-win situation where we have coastal protection and sustainable harvest of natural resources.
But it's not possible to stop all the salt water seeping into the rice fields. It's estimated over 1 million hectares of farmland are already contaminated by salt, and rising sea levels can only make matters worse. In the next-door province of Tra Vinh, farmer Lee Van Chong has bucked a trend. While his neighbours have seen yields drop from salinisation, he has seen his yield increase.
Please tell me, why have you been trying new ways to grow rice here?
I started to pilot this model because of the changes in the weather recently, the storms and the saltwater intrusion into the rice field. The current technique of rice production doesn't bring any profit to the farmers. So I thought I'd try a new model, and it's working very well.
Le Van Chong's method is based on the system of rice intensification.
My neighbours' fields took in water from the canal here, and they kept the water in the rice field in the usual way. But the rice died after a few days, because the salinity was very high, about 3.8%. I flooded the field, but then straight away I pumped the water out, so the rice had just enough moisture to grow.
Le Van Chong maintains that the only benefit of flooding rice fields is in order to keep weeds down. The rice is actually harmed by too much water, especially if it has a high salinity content. Instead, Le Van Chong transplants his seedlings in rows so he can weed in between the rice plants. The weeding process actually benefits the rice. It helps aerate the soil and further encourages rice growth.
The rice field here used the traditional cultivation. They used a lot of inputs like fertilizer and pesticides, yet the field is still very poor. Whereas the field in my members group, they just used the water for a short time, and with the rice intensification techniques, they got a very good yield.
The Kulong Delta Rice Research Institute is using biotechnology to help improve rice varieties. Working with organisations such as the International Rice Research Institute, they're developing rice varieties that are more tolerant of salt and could withstand longer periods underwater. It may be high-tech, but Dr. Nguyen Thi Lang insists the research will only succeed with the full participation of the farmers.
tại viện nghiên cứu, nhưng đối với tôi thì trong cái quá trình nghiên cứu.
Normally the scientist stays in the lab, but we feel there should be a connection between the rice study and the farmers who are working in the rice fields. So we go directly and we talk with the farmers to see what difficulties they have in order to help them. We exchange ideas about different types of rice varieties and weather conditions. We also collect ideas and the whole approach of the farmer. The feedback from the farmer is very important. It is crucial for our successful study back at the lab.
Environmentalists are now becoming supporters of biotechnology. Why? Because it can kill two birds with one stone. It can make a contribution to climate change. It can decrease the need for ploughing. That's equivalent to taking 8 million cars off the road. It can provide a sustainable agriculture, which you cannot with conventional technology, and you can benefit from food security.
Open to debate is how much the extreme weather events are due to global warming. But what is not in doubt is how widespread deforestation, destruction of coral reefs, and other forms of environmental impoverishment have left the people and economies of the region vulnerable to more loss of life and escalating bills to repair the damage.